Arizona, Colorado, Indiana, Michigan, New Jersey, Tennessee, and Virginia. WynnBET is now live in all these states, and the excitement of Wynn Las Vegas has finally landed in online sports betting and casino play. From boosted parlays to live in-game odds on everyday major sports, WynnBET gives you the tools to win. Sign up today for your risk-free $1,000 sports bet. Download the WynnBET app or visit wynnbet.com to start winning. The Timeline is a Blue Wire podcast. Welcome to the Timeline, a Phoenix Suns podcast. My name is Mike. I'm here with Sam. Sam, how was your birthday?
Oh, that's a different question. It was good, man. Thanks. It was good.
Yeah, you and Devin Booker have the same birthday.
Mm-hmm.
And you didn't score any points yesterday.
That's true. He beat me again.
I'm glad you had a good birthday. Happy birthday. The Suns won for you on your birthday. Still under 500, unfortunately, to start the season. But things started to click a little bit, I think, in this game, at least on my watch. And they look a little bit more like themselves, right?
Yeah, I'll take it. I mean, I was just dreading the idea of going into a podcast with the team being 1-4 and having to record that. That would really kind of spell disaster. I thought last night was not a perfect win by any means, but it was very reassuring. So I think there's plenty of stuff to talk about.
Yeah, it's funny, like, in the first quarter, watching the game, just going, oh no, getting a little concerned. They start to fall behind. The defense is late. Some problems with rotations, and then the shots aren't falling. And then they just picked it up. They really picked it up towards the last half of the second quarter, and then the third quarter, they just kind of demolished them. The Cavs 28-19, and then finished off the game. And then it won by 9. It got a little close, I think, towards the end in the fourth quarter. But
got to 5 points at one point. But yeah, there was no point where I felt like the Cavs were threatening to take the lead or anything. I just think it was just one of those things where a team was just launching threes and some of them went in, and that allowed them to get a little closer than it really was at the end there. And yeah, what were your thoughts just on your initial watch of that game? Yeah, so it was 42-28 Cavs at one point. And again, this is another game I watched on replay, and I was glad I did because the experience of being on Suns Twitter at the time, I'm sure, was reckless, with the team being down 14 in the early second quarter. And then the Suns go on a 50-12 run from that point on, open up a huge lead. The Cavs come back a little bit to try and end the game, but they still lose. But 50-12 is a level of destruction or annihilation of really just flicking a switch. And so when I talk about this being a reassuring win, that's really what I'm referencing. The fact that the Suns didn't play with their food. I mean, they got down to a reasonable degree out of the gate, but then they really turned it on and were ruthless for the rest of the game. And it was good to see them make that adjustment, even if it was still a game where they didn't shoot super well. Even if it was still a game where I think you can say there's some issues right now with execution, I think systematically the game plan is there. And as long as that's there, then you can build off of that and feel confident about the future.
Yeah, I think it's interesting this game and the last game. There seems to be more like a more equitable distribution of playmaking between Devin Booker and Chris Paul. You know, Devin Booker ended the game with 27 points, 9 assists, and Chris Paul had 16 and 10. But Devin Booker, something that we've been asking for, was able to sort of run the offense a little bit more for more extended stretches in this game, including with Chris Paul on the floor, who has seemed to be, I'm not sure what the numbers say, but more willing to shoot catch and shoots, which I think allows Devin Booker to do a little bit more of that playmaking, but also without Cameron Payne, Elfrid Payton, who it's just been so bad. But with Elfrid Payton on the floor, Devin Booker was sort of able to get things going too. There was a stretch in the second quarter where Jalen Smith was in, and it didn't go very well for that first Jalen Smith, those first Jalen Smith minutes at power forward. We'll talk about that later. But at a certain point in that second quarter, Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton checked back into the game with the starters, basically with Elfrid Payton. They came back with that lineup with Elfrid Payton on the floor, and then Chris Paul checked back in. They took the lead, basically held the lead for the rest of the game. And I think that was indicative of Devin Booker's ability to control the pace, to be able to play make, to find his shots, and then DeAndre Ayton doing all of the dirty work on the boards defensively and then setting screens and rolling to the rim. And both of those guys looked really good in that stretch, and Chris Paul came in and did a little bit more of Chris Paul. It's weird because you look at the stats in this game, 16 and 10 for Chris Paul. It still feels like he's not quite right to me, and that's still a pretty good game for Chris Paul, but it just doesn't quite look there yet, in my opinion. What do you think?
I thought he was more or less there. I really think this was the first game where Paul, Booker, Ayton were all back to their bread and butter. I thought they looked normal. Honestly, Ayton looked great in this game. Once the Suns turned it on halfway through the second quarter, I mean, he just got back to what he does best, that pick and roll offense with Chris Paul. He was fantastic. But, it wasn't anything crazy from him either. It wasn't, Ayton being asked to add something to his game. He was just a great pick and roll finisher, and hey, look, it works. With CP3, I don't know, man. So I'm looking at the box score here, 6 of 10, 2 of 2. I understand what you're saying. I think maybe the one thing that's been puzzling about him, I think it's a little bit too early to do an overarching kind of like, this is what the stats are. We should probably do that maybe in another week or two.
Yeah, but maybe after 10 games or so, yeah.
Yeah, I will say just so far, Chris Paul, I mean, he averaged 12.6 field goal attempts per game last year. He's down to 9.6 this year. It's only been 5 games. But a pretty big drop from over 16 points per game to now 12.8. 12.8 points and 10.6 assists per game. And what feels like a really intentional kind of tendency change for him to try and be as equitable as possible and share the ball. I think it's amazing, honestly, that some people still get on Chris Paul and say, oh, he's too involved in the offense. He's, as if he's hoarding the ball. Like, he's taking 10 shots a game. What else could you ask for out of your point guard? Yeah, I really think there's an argument right now that he's being too selfless. But in this game, he looked basically normal to me.
Well, that's what I think is kind of odd to me. What doesn't seem to be quite there yet when I watch him is the confidence in his mid-range shot. And they weren't dropping in the last few games. And in this game, he didn't take a lot of them. He's gotten to the line a lot. The Suns as a team have gotten to the line a lot, actually. I'll bring up those stats in just a second. But with Chris Paul, it just doesn't seem like he's... And look, maybe we discounted the fact that he had wrist surgery over the summer, and it takes a little bit of time to come back from that because he looked so good in preseason. Every time he played in preseason, he looked normal. He looked like Chris Paul. But it's just different. It's different to be in the regular season when the defense is ramped up and things are going a little differently and you're playing a lot more often. And, I just haven't seen the same type of confidence from him in that mid-range shot. I do think you brought up the shooting. I think this was more of a regular distribution of field goal attempts as far as closer to last season than the first few games when we were talking about Mikal Bridges. Was he had a game where he led the team in field goal attempts. 20 shots for Booker, 10 for Ayton, Chris Paul, 9 for Bridges, 7 for Crowder. The only thing that stands out really in field goal attempts is Cameron Johnson, who was 4 for 12, has yet to get it going. I think Cameron Johnson's still struggling a little bit. We talked about it.
I don't mind that,
the Patreon episode. Yeah, no, I want to keep going.
That. Keep shooting.
Especially without pain. But it just doesn't, he hasn't quite figured it out yet, I think.
You know what? I think it was good to bring up Mikal, though, because it should not go unnoticed that this was a game where Mikal Bridges fell back to his last year role. He really only scored in transition in this game. I don't think he ran any pick and rolls. And you know what? Yeah. Once the Suns turned it on, they turned it on. They know how to win when Mikal Bridges just stands in the corner and scores in transition. So, I think that's a valid argument there that you saw Mikal take a step back and the Suns went back to what worked for all of last season. Now, they still need to explore those new avenues potentially if they want to go even further this year. But yeah, they did what they knew how to do.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the whole challenge. That was one of the main questions that you and I brought up before the season. How does Monty Williams balance development with winning. And I think that we saw that that's a challenge in these first, 5 games so far, and we'll see how they balance it going forward. Quickly, I know we're going to bring up stats later, but just a check on 2 stats that I've been bringing up just throughout these first 5 games. Pace, the Suns are 10th in pace in the league so far in these games.
Don't believe it.
101.5. I know you're hesitant to believe it, and I think that's the right way to approach that. But I sort of looked at 100, and 100's a relatively slow pace in today's NBA. But I sort of looked at 100 as the line that I wondered if the Suns could cross, and they're holding up above 100 in pace, and a lot of that has to do with Devin Booker pushing the pace. And this I thought was pretty good that they were capable of maintaining it with Cameron Payne missing a few games. So we'll see if that sustains, something that I'm definitely keeping an eye on. Here's a crazy one.
Sure, go.
The NBA as a whole, we saw some people tweeting about this. Offensive rating is down dramatically.
Hell yeah. Yes.
As a whole, on the average in the NBA, because of a lack of free throw shooting across the league.
A lack of bullshit.
Yes, players are not successfully baiting the refs into calling fouls. Somehow, and this is not a surprise, I think, to people who watch the Suns very closely, that has not affected the Suns at all. The Suns are currently 5th in the NBA in free throw attempts. 5th in the NBA of free throw attempts. Over 20. I think it's like 21.5 or around there. But only 4 teams have shot more free throw attempts than the Phoenix Suns. This is the most surprising stat for me. Somehow in the playoffs, people who did not watch a lot of the Suns labeled Devin Booker as a foul baiter. I was not really worried about that affecting his overall amount of free throw attempts he took. Maybe one every other game he was able to get the refs on, but I didn't think it was going to be a huge thing, and it really hasn't affected them so far. Is that surprising to you?
No, not at all. I'm still, it's amazing to me that the foul baiter narrative was ever a thing with Devin Booker. It's like, have you ever watched this team before? I'm not going to deny that Chris Paul and Devin Booker have both exaggerated contact in the past, especially Chris Paul, that they knew the tricks and the types of things that they could get away with under the old system, and that sometimes they use those to their advantage, just like every superstar in the NBA. But it was never a go-to move for anyone on this team. Not Booker, not Paul, not anyone. And what we are seeing now, I don't know if it's going to be like, if it's going to remain a consistent 6 or 7 point offensive rating drop, which is what it is right now through several games, because that's huge. For it to be that significant of a drop league-wide is huge. So maybe it'll be a little bit less than that once the stats start to even out. But what I do think we can say now is just like this, in my eyes, has been the most successful initiative by an officiating body in a major American sport in, I have no idea how long. Probably at least in my lifetime. Possibly ever. Like I'm so, maybe that's hyperbole, but I am so excited by what I've seen from the NBA this season. It has given me faith in the league to officiate the game in a reasonable manner in the first time in how long. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah. And it's sort of universally loved by fans. There's really, I mean, like fans of, James Harden, Trae Young, they might be a little bothered by it, but they also hated it when other teams did it to them. So I think it's sort of universally praised. Everyone's sort of okay with it. Now, some people have made the case that they've gone a little too far. I'm not sure about that. I haven't really seen anything that bothers me too much. In general, I think that the NBA doesn't call a lot of extreme contact at the rim, and that was the case last year. And if you're making the case that that's the reason or that's something that they pulled back on this year, no, they did that last year too. I have a whole thread on it. They just don't call stuff at the rim for whatever reason. But you don't buy the pace. You still don't buy it after. I know it's only been 5 games, but you think it's going to go down.
Where were they last year? I don't remember.
Below 100, like 90. Yeah, no, like 26th maybe.
26. It was that low. Yeah, I mean, I think they could be league average. That's fine. How's Alfred affecting that stat so far? Did you look at that?
That's a good question. I didn't check that. But it is funny that...
I just think it's funny. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I just think it's funny. So I watched the feed for the Cavs game with the Cavs broadcasters. And you can always tell when you go into a road game like this team just went to the finals, and you can always tell. I don't want to call out specific broadcasters and whatever, but you can always tell when a broadcaster knows nothing about the Suns because they just kind of, it's like the way their brain works is they look at the roster, they see a bunch of young players, they go, oh, young equals fast. This is a team that wants to get out in transition, so you better watch out because they want to run you off the floor, as if it's still like 2006. That's just not the identity of the Suns anymore. No. It's just not. I know it's been the identity of the franchise for 30 years, so I think a lot of people have trouble letting go of it, but it absolutely was not the identity of them last year. Now, that doesn't mean we know Booker's really good at it when he gets out and runs, and McHale, fantastic, Ayton, fantastic. When they actually do it, great, but just statistically, it's not something they did all that much last year. Maybe they're doing it a little bit more through the first 5 games of this season. I just have a hard time believing that it's actually going to be something that sticks when Chris Paul is your point guard for 30-plus minutes per game. So we'll see. And the other thing I want to say, okay, so then Chris Paul comes out of the game. Well, if Elford's coming into the game, or even Campaign, but especially Elford right now, just because you're playing fast doesn't mean you're playing good. And I think it's important that we keep that in mind as well.
Yeah.
Pace has never been a stat that has correlated with success. Suns fans think very fondly of pace because we think of the 7 seconds or less teams and whatever, and those teams were great, but there are just as many teams in the history of the league that play super fast and are complete dog shit. So just because, a different point guard comes in and is gunning it down the floor and embraces like full chaos, it doesn't actually mean you're doing anything there.
Yeah. Once again, the Washington Wizards were number 1 in pace last season. Currently number 2 in pace, the Houston Rockets. It's not entirely correlated to being good. Although right now it's just kind of interesting to look at pace, and I think you're right that it may not sustain. We'll see if it sustains. Something I want to talk about: Jalen Smith played minutes in this game. Now, quickly, we'll just say that DeAndre Ayton left the game with a knee contusion. He's the player I think that we've sort of said in the past that if he misses a significant amount of time, that could be a big issue. So maybe we'll get back to that in just a second, but let's quickly talk about Jalen Smith. Jalen Smith played power forward, basically took Nader's minutes early in this game, and then came back and played center. What was your opinion? By the way, him coming back in and playing center, the Suns were up by a lot, so that could have been the reason why. They even went to a no center lineup after it didn't go very well for Jalen Smith.
Glad you noticed that too.
Yeah, that essentially signifies that that he maybe passed Frank Kaminsky in the rotation, or maybe they just counted on him not screwing up enough to affect like an 18-point lead or whatever he came in at. What did you think of Jalen Smith in those minutes?
I don't really know that it means that he passed Frank Kaminsky in the rotation. I don't think I would say that yet. I just think this was a sign that Monty's trying new things. Between the no center lineup and between Jalen came in. So first of all, that Ayton contusion, little bit scary for me, just because anytime he leaves the game, that we have no details on this, but just the prospect of him being someone who misses a significant period of time is very frightening to me, and I've always said that since the offseason. But Jalen, his first stint was before that happened, so like you said, he was playing power forward, and it was surprising to see him out there, and he was not great in the first stint. I thought he made a couple of good reads with his pick and roll defense, and then I thought he also made a lot of bad ones. So it was kind of inconsistent. It was a mixed bag. Then he came in later at center in the second stint. Like, he didn't really take any shots in the first stint. There wasn't really an opportunity to look at what he was doing specifically offensively. So then he comes in the second stint. I think the defense it's an issue. And I think the offense, it's an issue. I'm struggling to say it in a nice way. What did you think?
Maybe I think offensively I'm less worried. I'm just less worried offensively because I think they've sort of simplified his role and limited him enough offensively that he's just setting screens and rolling to the rim.
Did you see the one possession late in the game where he attacks the basket and gets clobbered twice?
Yeah.
He gets clobbered twice, yeah. He gets clobbered twice in a row, but the Suns still retain possession somehow, so they bring it back out. It goes
Jay
back.
Crowder, that's how. Yeah.
Sure. You literally just watched the game or rewatched it. So
yeah.
So I guess Jay Crowder gets it. I don't remember if Chris Paul was in at that point. I think he was. Brings the ball back out. Shot clock's going down, so they give it back to Jalen with like 2 seconds left, and he doesn't realize that there are 2 seconds left, so he dribbles into a shot clock violation. It was just like, it was a mess. It looked really sloppy. He's a second-year player, you know, but he looked like someone who maybe wasn't expecting to play last night, and Monty called his name, and he was like, "Oh shit, I'm in. Okay, great." Mm-hmm. And yeah, it wasn't great.
Yeah, that one actually ended up being a live ball turnover before the shot clock was expiring because for whatever reason, I think that Cameron Johnson pitched it over to him and then was running around him for like a simple DHO cut to the basket play that JaVale and Ayton are sort of good at working with Cameron Johnson on. Jalen Smith wasn't quite there. I still think offensively it's not a huge issue. I think the team can run relatively well with him in there because he's just going to set screens and dive. If he catches the ball on a defender, that's really more of a problem with what the guards did because he really should only get it if he's wide open at the rim. Hopefully defenses collapse on him a little bit because he's capable of finishing if he's open at the rim.
It would also be nice if defenses respected his shot. By the way, they don't as of now.
No. And they shouldn't yet. He hasn't quite showed.
I don't blame them whatsoever. I'm just saying it would be nice if we got there.
Yeah. I had the game, so I had people over at my house last night. We were just hanging out for like a Halloween gathering. I had the game on, but I wasn't paying full attention to it. That's why I watched it this morning. I remember coming to my TV at some point in the second half and saying, "Oh, wow, the Suns made a run. They're up by a lot. Oh, and look, Jalen Smith is in. Oh, and look, he's at center. He must have played really well for them to go up." And then I rewatched it today, and I'll tell you this. The defense was bad. It was really, really bad. Like, really bad. It wasn't really... I was looking for reasons to feel like there was something there. I was looking for promise, hope. And I didn't get it. I'll be honest. I didn't get it. I feel like just about every single pick and roll once he was at center, he made a mistake. He gave up an open three. He gave up open runs to the rim. Mm-hmm. He didn't switch when he was supposed to. His drop, if you want to call it that, was too high, and that allowed guards to get beyond him. And there was just no containment of the drives at all. And that was it was just bad. It was really bad. So if you were listening to this podcast hoping that I would say something more positive about him, I'm sorry. I just watched it, and I paid very close attention to it. And it just didn't give me what I wanted out of it. I don't see much there right now, and I'm interested to see if they're going to play him more and give him another chance. I have a feeling he played extra minutes in this game because by the time he went in, they were up by like 16, 17. It wasn't because they trusted him maybe as much as they should have. And it's good that he played minutes with Chris Paul because I think Chris Paul found ways to utilize him. Get him a few wide open shots at the rim, but I just don't think that it didn't look good. I wasn't happy.
It was also maybe just matchup based. We should mention, like, if there's any team to not play Abdul Nader against at power forward and give Jalen some minutes instead, it's the team that starts 3 7-footers. So that's not going to be every situation. The Cavs are weird. They're constructed weird. But yeah, I wouldn't say that, like, Nader has not played well at all coming out of the gate. And yet I can't say that Jalen earns those minutes over him last night. I think Nader probably looks better 9 times out of 10 if you just play him 10 minutes instead. Or, I don't know, man, maybe just like shrink the rotation even more and play Cam Johnson a fuck ton of minutes. Maybe that's the answer at this point. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't think they'll do that this early in the season, but that's definitely coming at some point in the season if Nader doesn't find ways to make better decisions. By the way,
Torrey Craig just scored a career high like 30 points the other night.
Yeah,
relevant to this conversation, maybe.
I mean, he gets a lot of opportunities on Indiana, but when the Suns first traded for Abdul Nader, we asked our friends at the Uncontested podcast, the OKC Thunder podcast, about Nader. And they just said, well, he'll shoot it when he catches the ball. That's what they warned us about. Mm-hmm. And so far that's been the case. It's just he doesn't seem to react to defense. If once he makes his mind up, his mind is made up. He's going to do whatever he decided to do.
I've kind of made my peace with that, though. My thing with Nader is it's just like he's not a power forward. So, why are you trying to fit him into a hole that he doesn't fit in, But anyway.
I mean, they put Cameron Johnson on the power forwards, really. Cameron Johnson was guarding Kevin Love for a significant portion of this game.
Nader didn't play at all in this game. There's an open roster spot. I have every reason to believe, I guess, that they'll continue to look at the trade market, survey the buyout market. We'll see. You can't go like this the whole season unless something unforeseen happens and Jalen Smith really figures it out. Granted, we're just talking about like the 10th spot in the rotation. You know, some people might think this isn't a huge deal, but it matters. It's a move on the margin that matters, and hopefully they figure it out.
The Suns clearly are not used to playing with a guy like Landry Shamet. Now, having said that, 1 for 7 in this game, 0 for 5 from 3. Felt a little better to me as far as the way they were utilizing him, the way they were getting him the ball. I do think that he was forcing some shots from the three-point line off the dribble because he felt clearly they've sort of emphasized him taking those three-point shots, and that's probably the right way to go because ultimately his gravity matters even when the shot doesn't fall. Still has not clicked, right? We still have not seen a great Landry Shamet game outside of preseason, but what do you think?
It's fine. He's shooting 40% on the year. Like, just to ground people for a second, he's shooting 40% from threes. And I've seen people, I saw someone, I asked for questions because we're going to answer some questions in our next segment. And I saw someone reference him, calling him sham brick. And I'm like, it is way too early for that. It is way too early for the blasphemy, especially for a guy who's literally shooting 40. He's shooting 40% from deep. I'm not going to say that I'm not going to call him sham brick based on that one game. I think, look, I don't know if you saw Mike, but he literally told a reporter, I forget who, I think it was Gerald, after the game where he took only one shot, he said, I should not be taking only one shot. Anytime I'm only taking one shot, I feel like I'm letting my team down, which is exactly what I wanted him to say because he understands he's in the game for a reason. So he comes out in this game, he takes more shots. It didn't work. That's fine. He's a shooter. He's going to be streaky. I think a big Landry Shamet performance is coming. It's only a matter of time. But the team can still do a lot better at helping him succeed. And by the team, I mean, like, I guess the point guards, but I also just mean Monty Williams. Like, the way the Suns offense is kind of situates players like Landry Shamet, I do feel like there are too many possessions where his gravity and the potential of the way he moves goes to waste, and he kind of just sits in the corner, and there's not enough movement built into the offense. There's a lot of passing. The Suns have a lot of playmaking built into their offense, and they have a lot of guys kind of who are triple threats, who survey a potential opportunity, see a closeout coming, maybe put the ball on the floor, either shoot, make a pass for someone else, those types of reads. But there aren't necessarily a lot of opportunities for off-movement shooters in the Suns' offense, and there never have been. So I think that's something that it's just not a perfect fit for Shamet so far. They got to figure out something. We just haven't seen it yet.
Yeah. Speaking of three-point shooting, just quickly to mention this too, the Suns are 27th overall in three-point percentage so far this season. Not where they should be based on personnel. They're shooting 31% as a team.
Yeah.
I brought that up just to look at it real quick. I'm gonna go on a quick tangent on this real quick.
Go for it.
The New York Knicks, 5-1.
Bing bong.
Shooting 40.7% from three. There's a sign of regression coming if I've ever seen one. The Charlotte Hornets is well over 40%, 40.2.
So can I push back? I actually like the Knicks this year.
I do too.
Part of it is whenever I say nice things about the Knicks, a lot of Knicks fans like me on Twitter. And I'm kind of starting to understand why the Knicks media landscape is what it is, because that validation kind of does something to your brain. Anyway, I think regression is coming in that number for the Knicks. They're not going to shoot above 40%. But you look at their roster, like they really just do have shooters in a way that they
have shooters, but that's extremely high, and it is 6 games in. That's why. Same with the Hornets, and they have shooters too, but a team shooting over 40% as a team, that's not sustainable. So, and they've eked out a couple of their wins. So if you're looking to gamble, then feel free to use that. Another one that stood out to me, and we're bringing this up. The third best team in the league right now in three-point percentage. The 3-3 Los Angeles Lakers.
Did you say
that is insane?
Third best?
Third best. Right? Wow. Isn't that interesting?
That's
like
crazy.
You're talking about a team that's sort of 3-3.
and had sort of a universally thought of as a bad start, is somehow third best in 3-point shooting. They're gonna get worse in that stat. It's gonna get worse.
Well, what are they at right now? So like
38.9%. Yeah, 39% basically.
So the stat I like looking at specifically, because not all 3-point shots are created equal, as we know.
Yes.
So I specifically looked at wide open threes because it's always a good sign. You want your offense. It's a sign that your offense is working as designed if you can create as many wide open threes as possible, regardless of whether you're hitting them or not. Whether you're hitting them or not is a question of execution that is entirely just not relevant to anything this early in the season because it's subject to such a high degree of variance. So the Suns are generating as many wide open threes as you would want so far. They're shooting only 33% on them, which to me is a very good sign. They're in the bottom 5 in the league in their wide open 3-point percentage. They're also bottom 5, Mike. This is really interesting. In free throw percentage, they're shooting 69% from the line as a team. Nice. They shot 83% the past 2 seasons. They were literally the best free throw shooting team of all time 2 seasons ago, I think. And then last year, they were also like one of the top 5, one of the top 10 best free throw shooting teams of all time. To go from that to 69%, and to go from they were shooting 41% on wide open threes last year, continuity and all that, they basically keep the entire roster intact, and now they're shooting 33%. To me, it's the best sign. If you're a Suns fan, you look at that and you say positive regression is coming. And so I look at that. This is why, it wasn't easy. If you watch the way that they beat the Cavs last night, it wasn't an easy win, but to have that dominant of a stretch, like going 50-12, like I said at the very beginning of the episode, to do that in a game where the entire team made 6 threes, you shot like 25% from deep, is really impressive. Like, that should be reassuring to people. The shots will start falling eventually. Jay Crowder's going to hit his hot streak. Landry Shaman's going to hit his stride. Mikal Bridges, we haven't seen any of those guys. Cam Johnson, obviously. They're not necessarily all going to click at the same time, but once it comes, it's going to come. And I'm really not worried about this team's offense right now. If anything, if we want to talk just broadly about the reasons they're 2 and 3, I think it's almost all about defense and not offense. I think this team's offense is going to be just fine.
Yeah, the offense looks fine, and it's just about hitting shots at this point. And that's a good. If you're not impressed by the Suns beating the Cavaliers on the second night of a back-to-back, that's
totally
fair.
Valid. Totally
that's
valid.
Fair.
Yeah.
But also, I do think that those statistics do point to a team that is going to improve offensively, and that could make a big difference as they sort of shore up the defensive things that they're struggling with. And I thought this last game was a great example of the starters clicking again defensively in a way that they were not in the first few games, because the bench was not keeping them in this game like they had been in some of the previous games. They were getting beat pretty badly. But the starters were able to get it going. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, I have something else I want to talk about, and then we'll get over to some questions that people asked us on Twitter. We'll be right back.
Listen, life's all about leveling up. Whether you're handling business on the field or kicking it in your zone, you like to celebrate with cigars that match the moment. That's why you should link up with Famous Cigars to bring you a wild deal. Right now, you can grab 8 premium cigars for just $8. You heard that right. 8 top-rated cigars at $1 a stick. Top quality brands like Oliva, Romeo y Julieta, and Davidoff. Handpicked just for you and worth over $80. Hit up famouscigars.com/cam and lock in this exclusive deal. While you're there, check out their insane selection of premium cigars, all shipped fresh and fast from their massive 20,000 square foot humidor. That's half a football field. Famous Cigars has been in the game since 1939 and still family owned. So celebrate every win with the folks at Famous. 8 cigars for $8. famouscigars.com/cam.
All right, Sam. So DeAndre Ayton left this game with a knee contusion. I didn't see the injury. I don't think anyone has caught it yet. We're not exactly sure what it is. It could be that they just, they were up by enough, and as a precaution, they just sat him out the game because they thought they could win without him, and he'll be back by the next game. It's possible he misses time. If he misses time, first of all, I guess the first thing I'll ask you, is it automatic to start JaVale McGee and have Frank Kaminsky come off the bench? What do you think about the prospect of him missing time?
I don't think there's any other choice. That is what your roster allows. I mean, the other choice is play Jalen.
They could start Frank.
They could play Jalen Smith. Yeah, they could start Frank. No, I think you start JaVale because he's the most similar player to Ayton that you have to mesh with the starters. And then Frank is a pretty similar player to Dario, which is who your second unit guys ideally, like if you have Campaign. I understand Campaign is also out right now, but like your main second unit guys that you kind of associate with this team, Campaign, Cam Johnson, they're so used to playing with Dario from last season, they'd be used to playing with a guy like Frank as well. Yeah. So, yeah, it's play JaVale. The game plan, if you lose Ayton for any extended period of time, is you play JaVale and Frank. Hope that JaVale can give you 24 minutes before he like reaches his fifth foul. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what it is.
In this game, JaVale McGee got a rebound, quickly looked at Elfrid Payton, and then took 4 massive dribbles down the floor.
And no one stopped him.
And no one stopped him, including, by the way, Monty Williams, who people tend to believe doesn't allow DeAndre Ayton to do certain things. People say that. But somehow, JaVale McGee is allowed to get the rebound and dribble all the way down the floor and continue playing the game. I just thought that was kind of interesting. The idea of DeAndre Ayton being out of this game, or being out of games coming up, is a little scary. I think that the Suns are playing some pretty bad teams over the next few games outside of Atlanta, so they have a chance to win even without him. But the defense was so much better with him on the floor than at any point in these last few games, and it'll be interesting. It'll be an interesting test to see what it looks like to take DeAndre Ayton off of this team and just plug a rim runner like JaVale McGee, who's still pretty good at rim protection, but like JaVale McGee makes $5 million this year. DeAndre Ayton was asking for a maximum contract, so the difference in caliber of players should be incredibly obvious, and it'll be up to the rest of the team to really pick it up and find ways to win without DeAndre Ayton. So I'm not looking forward to that. Obviously, we're hoping for an update. Probably, I'm guessing it'll come tomorrow. Right now, we're recording this on Sunday. I'm guessing we'll hear something on Monday. I think they probably have some sort of media availability on Monday. So we'll see if he's listed as questionable or out. Do you have any other thoughts on him potentially being out?
No, I don't want to speculate.
Okay.
Not at this point.
We talked about the free throws, how refs are calling these games. One of the big topics for people has been James Harden struggling with the new rules, and I think a combination of him coming back from injury has sort of exacerbated that conversation. The combination of that and the new rules has made James Harden look not quite the James Harden that we were used to. And somebody on Twitter, Dylan K. Thompson, he goes by Doob on Twitter, he said, did this season's rule change, he asked us, did this season's rule change make Devin Booker the best shooting guard in the league? Which is just a fantastic question for multiple reasons. One,
my agenda. It's time.
Right. It's an interesting question just for like, that's interesting. Can he be? Not is he. I think can he be is how I'm approaching that. And then two, it's also James Harden shade disguised as a question about Devin Booker, which is just, I don't know, it's just a good turn of phrase. I like that question because I just think it's kind of a spicy take. It's kind of a hot take to wonder if Devin Booker is there.
It's a very much a hot take. It's a hot take.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think he's there. But I do find that interesting because it doesn't seem like in the last few games, obviously he came back from COVID, struggled in the first few games. The last few games he looks more like himself. He appears to be trusted to do a little bit more playmaking, I think, which will make a big difference statistically for him as far as if his assist numbers go back up to 6 or 7, and then he somehow increases his scoring by 1 point or so, and he's at like 27 and 7. That's a pretty good case for being the best shooting guard in the league. What do you think?
This is the portion of the episode where I get to piss off Suns fans, I guess. I point out, even in this Harden is nothing more than, a McDonald's worker landscape that the NBA is now. This narrative that Harden is toast. So far, Booker ranks 5th in scoring this season among shooting guards. And we have pointed out before that the Suns' offense, equitable as it is, does not allow Booker the same amount of touches as some other guys. But I do just want to point out, right now you've got Zach LaVine averaging 26, 5, and 5. And you also have Bradley Beal, CJ McCollum. This is kind of funny. I don't expect this to remain the case, but Anthony Edwards actually is the 4th leading shooting guard in points per game right now, above Devin Booker. So it's tough to make the case that he's better than Beal or LaVine or even Donovan Mitchell, in my opinion. I think they're all just kind of in the same tier. And, you can argue till you're blue in the face about who's a little bit better at this, who's a little bit better at that. I don't think that there's a standout among that group. I really don't. I think it'd be hard to argue that one guy is just such a clear standout that if you put him in any context, in a vacuum, whatever, he would just stand out above all the rest.
Yeah.
That's probably going to piss off Suns fans. I'm not going to lie, because I feel like Suns fans really think Booker is like a tier above like Zach LaVine, but I'm just like, where's the evidence of that? I don't know. His defense is better. I just think
he's a better playmaker than all of those guys. Except for James Harden.
I don't know if he's a better playmaker than Bradley Beal. I will say he's a better playmaker than Zach LaVine. Can't hit a pull-up three like Zach LaVine, though. So you know what? I think it's a wash. I do. Zach LaVine shot 40% on like 8 threes last year. That's really impressive. So yeah, I think it's a wash.
That is really impressive if you're only looking at the box score. I just think decision making matters a lot in this conversation. And I think, to be honest, I think the most likely scenario is that James Harden makes it very obvious that he's better than everyone by the end of the season once he just picks it up and understands the rules and stops trying to foul bait. Foul baiting, in fact, this could actually make James Harden a better player in the playoffs because he tends to rely on foul baiting so much that it affects him more in the playoffs. If he learns to avoid that and focus on the things that he's good at without doing that, it's really James Harden's league as far as shooting guards go. I do think there's a chance. I think there's a chance for any one of these guys individually to do it, just to sort of echo what you're saying. But I do think there's a chance. It's if they trust him, if they give him more touches. I think if Devin Booker just finds a way to average, like I said, like 27 and 7, which is very difficult for the record. Those are LeBron James numbers, essentially, as far as scoring and assists. Then yeah, I think you can make that case. But it's just a fascinating question, and I do think, for the record, for those who are wondering, Devin Booker's free throw attempts have basically gone down one full attempt from last season, including per 36 minutes. I don't think that after 5 games matters much. I think after like 15 games, now that he's sort of back and seems to be playing more minutes and is in better conditioning, in better shape, I'm going to recheck those numbers again and see how it's affecting him. But technically, that's basically 1 full point taken away from him per game if you factor in just the free throw attempts alone. It doesn't seem to be affecting him as much as someone like James Harden because it's not something he relied on as much. But it is affecting him the same way it's affecting a lot of the major stars in the NBA. So we'll see how that affects his scoring going forward.
Look, Book is just not... He's not one of those slasher types that... Obviously, he slashes. He drives to the rim. He's super efficient when he gets there, but he doesn't need it like some of these guys need it. So he's going to be fine. It's a lot of these other dudes that have to adjust.
Yeah, it's funny because I think a lot of people thought that Chris Paul and Devin Booker were going to be affected, and they're really not so far. Okay, so you asked for some questions on Twitter. Let's get to a few of those. I don't think we'll have time to get to all of them, but let's go back and forth and pick one. So
there are like 25 questions, so we're not going to get to all of them.
I haven't looked at it in a minute. Go ahead and you pick one, and then we'll go back and forth. I'll pick one, and we'll see how many we can
We'll go back and forth. Some of these are serious. Some of these are silly. I'll start with a serious one from our buddy Mark Schindler over at Premium Hoops. He said, are you, and this is something I've thought about as well, so I'm glad he brought it up. Are you at all worried about Chris Paul's defense? What's your take on that early in the season?
Well, I think we've talked about it quite a bit, I guess, over the last few weeks. I guess I need to get better at remembering what was on Patreon and what wasn't. But
we definitely mentioned it on Patreon. I remember.
Yes, I'm worried about it, but I'm less I'm less worried about it after watching the games than I was before the season, I think. He's just so smart still. I think that as far as regular season goes, I think he'll be fine. In fact, watching early in this game, in the Cavs game, I was trying to identify where a lot of the defensive mistakes were coming from in the first quarter when they were struggling. And believe it or not, Jay Crowder was just sort of late on a lot of rotations early in the game. Mm-hmm. And like Devin Booker still kind of gets lost and then rotates to the wrong guy every once in a while. And that affects the defense negatively too. It's not like I haven't watched any of these games and identified Chris Paul as a major issue so far. So I'm less worried about it now. I have much more concern for the playoffs than the regular season. So I would say I'm concerned, but not like overly concerned right now.
Okay. I'm not overly concerned either. I have noticed like when the Suns have played at their worst this season, there's sort of been a compounding effect where various guys lose focus. But you always expect Chris Paul, I guess, and maybe this is an unfair expectation, but on the other hand, you're being paid $40 million or whatever, $30 million, I guess now. So the expectation is what it is, that Chris Paul is going to be your rock and maintain focus. Even if he doesn't have the size advantage on defense, you expect a certain level of engagement. And I will say that there have been times, like in that Kings game that happened earlier this week, where Chris Paul was like playing off the ball and he would like lose cutters and shit like that like fundamental stuff. That worried me because I was like, if he goes down, the entire ship is going down, basically. The system cannot survive overcoming defensive faults to this degree. So I will say there have been little things like that I've noticed. Mm-hmm. It hasn't been a consistent every game thing. And I don't think it's been a thing. This is what we're going to be talking about. Like when we eventually hit the playoffs, obviously is like our team's targeting Chris Paul. We saw in last year's playoffs, they tried. They didn't really do it very successfully at all until maybe the Bucks series. So, I think he's holding up just fine for now, but it is a thought that's in the back of my mind for sure.
I mean, ultimately, the Suns switch a lot. By the way, they've done less switching at the beginning of this year than they did last year. I think they switched more in this Cavs game, I think, than they had previously.
Is that from the eye test?
Just from the eye test.
Or do you have a source with Second Spec? Okay, cool.
I do have a source with Second Spectrum. Maybe I'll ask him. But anyway, if they continue to switch a lot, the smallest guy on the floor tends to be the one that's going to be targeted.
Totally.
No matter what.
Yeah.
So it just is what it is. So you just have to find ways to help off of him and then rotate good enough to successfully contest a three. Because ultimately, when you help guys, when you throw a double at a guy, they're most likely going to get a 3-point attempt out of that. So for Chris Paul, he's just so smart. I'm just choosing to not be super worried about it yet. But yeah, it's concerning. The good news is, I think people expected Devin Booker to be picked on. The reality is Devin Booker is worse off the ball than he is on the ball. So on the ball, they just didn't really pick on him unless they can get like a big guy like Marcus Morris posted up on him. And that's really the only thing that happened in the playoffs. So that's good news beyond that. All right, Brad said, at BigBird1182 said, I believe the slow start has something to do with the short offseason and long playoff run. I would be curious to see what you guys think about it. I guess we've sort of identified what the issues were, like in that they're missing shots, defense was a little late, maybe they're a little out of shape. Maybe we didn't identify why those issues were happening. Based on our analysis, what do you think?
Also, the big one that I think we're missing there, that was a huge difference between the way they played Cleveland and the way they played Portland and Sacramento. The transition defense in those losses sucked. It was really bad. Like, I think that's one of those things that people don't really notice until it falls apart, but that can be an easy 10 or 15 points, and then you're in a hole that you can't dig yourself out of.
And the Cavs run, dude. They do
yeah.
run.
And that's when I talk about how the Suns flipped a switch. Granted, once the Suns really started clicking on offense, you don't really have to worry about transition defense if you're making every bucket. And so it did get to a point where it was like, okay, well, they can get set every time because they're just giving it to Booker and he's sizing up these dudes from the mid-range and Chris Paul's running the pick and roll with Ayton. They're not missing. So it was fine at a certain point. But when they first shifted the momentum, when they were down by like 12 or 14 in the second quarter, prior to that point, Sexton was getting out in transition, and the Cavs were kind of giving them the work. and they had to retune their focus, and they were able to find that balance, and that made a huge difference for the Suns. So when they're locked in with their transition defense, this can be a really good team. When they have the time to set up, I mean, it's just kind of obvious when any defense has time to really load up on the opposing system, they'll be fine. But that focus wasn't always there, and I guess it's one part focus, it's one part conditioning. And I don't know. It's like I feel like watching that Cleveland game, I was starting to see a team that looked like it had its land legs back. But I guess we'll just see, man. The lingering effects of that short off season could continue to haunt them for a little while in terms of the whole conditioning aspect. We're just going to find out.
Yeah, I wonder how it'll affect late in the season more than how it'll affect the beginning of the season.
Yeah, good point.
I think that maybe, well, at least for me, from my analysis, I think I discounted the amount of which Devin Booker having COVID would affect the beginning of the season. I didn't factor into the fact that he would be playing less minutes and that his conditioning wouldn't be right as much as maybe I should have. I also think that there's an element of Chris Paul's injury and his surgery that he had over the offseason affecting the beginning of the year. And, to some extent, adding in some new guys. I don't think that they added in enough new guys for that to be a problem. I'm sure the short offseason had something to do with it because, especially for somebody like Devin Booker, who basically didn't stop playing because he went to the Olympics immediately afterwards, maybe that had an effect. But I think that, for me, I probably didn't factor in the fact that, COVID affects the season. I mean, Jaylen Brown was just talking about it. He said that after COVID, each game he plays, the recovery feels like he played 3 games. So it affects these guys a little differently. We haven't heard anything like that from Devin Booker, but yeah.
Yeah. These guys are, also remembered afraid to talk about it for valid reasons. They're all thinking about their own contracts and the way that messages are perceived. It's honestly crazy, dude, that we just don't know.
Yeah.
The long-term ramifications of all this, but there you go.
And how different they are depending on the person.
Yeah.
You want to pick another one?
Yeah, I'll move on. I think we should hit a couple more. Some of these are so mean. Is there any way, Mr. Consistency 3, is there any way we, the fans, can waive Nader's contract? I don't think he's been that bad, guys. I think, he's more or less fine. Here's one. Stephen Freeman says Landry should be the first guard off the bench until Payne is back. Changed my mind.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's interesting because if they just haven't done that, I don't know. It still would be a change from the way that Monty Williams has coached this team ever since he got Devin Booker. There's been very little point book without another playmaker. We have talked about it. Maybe the emergence of Mikal Bridges as a secondary ball handler. To this point, he's really been more of a third ball handler than a second ball handler, but maybe that improvement allows Monty Williams to play less, basically two guard minutes. Now, Landry can dribble, but he really hasn't ran any pick and rolls for the Suns yet. If that were the case, then it would be Devin Booker handling a lot of the point guard duties. And somebody else asked about specific lineups that were to maximize point book. I don't know that they can sustain that. That would mean less minutes of Chris Paul and Devin Booker playing together, first of all, because you'd have to fully stagger them. So essentially they'd play the beginning of the game and the end of the game together probably, and the beginning of each half, and that might be it. And I don't know. I don't think that that's going to happen. I do find it to be kind of interesting because one of the more interesting stretches of a previous game was when Landry Shamet was playing with Devin Booker and Devin Booker was playing at point guard. I just don't see it happening. What do you think?
Elfrid had a pretty impressive stat line here as I look at the box score. 11 minutes, 0 points and 0 assists. To log 11 minutes as a point guard and have neither of those things is pretty impressive.
And 2 very loud misses.
I'm struggling.
As far as field goals.
Here's the thing, man. I'm struggling to find the kernel of hope. So can you convince me that it's going to get better before we talk about changes? Yeah.
Well, no, I can't. I think that you got to.
Then we're left with no choice. We're left with no choice. You got to
get Cameron Payne back as quickly as possible. That's the real hope for this.
Jeez.
With Payton, I think that. Well, here's what I'll say. In this game, in the second half when Payton was playing, Devin Booker was ostensibly the point guard. Like, he wasn't the point guard, but he was. You know, like, Peyton was playing off the ball. Not something that you want. It's similar to, I don't know, Javon Carter without as good of defense playing off the ball, basically. But,
except Javon could shoot.
Yeah, Javon can shoot, and Peyton just doesn't. I don't know how many three-point attempts he's had on the season, but I have a feeling it's not much. But yeah, I mean, you just look. We brought it up before the season. 99th percentile getting to the rim, worst percentile in the league at finishing, and it's just so obvious when you watch Peyton play. He gets to the rim, and his decision making goes completely out of his head, and he just throws up bad shots on defense. If he doesn't get fouled, it's a bad shot. So it's not been fun to watch Peyton play. So I don't blame people for thinking about this. I just don't know that Monty Williams is going to change.
He also missed both free throws the one time he got to the line. That was painful.
Yeah. Do you think it's going to change?
I'm hoping Cam's back sometime this week, man, and we don't have to think about it.
Yeah,
but you're starting
to update soon.
You're starting to get into the danger zone when you think that way. Unfortunately, what do you got? We have time for a couple more.
Let's see. What's your favorite scary movie from Surge?
Do you want to go first?
I'm gonna be almost basic, I think, in my answer because
it's fine.
First of all, I love scary movies. My girlfriend and I, every October, every year, we watch a lot of them, and we try to go through classics because, you know, a lot of times they're classics for a reason. And one year we watched basically the most popular scary movies, and the one that stood out to me in the last few years was literally just Psycho, the movie Psycho. It's so good, and it holds up so well for a movie that's that old. Like, it's very old, and the pacing feels like a modern movie. Mm-hmm. And I was just surprised at how well it's held up. I don't think I had ever really sat down and watched it beginning to end. I think it was one of those movies where on cable I saw the beginning, and then I saw the end, and I saw the middle at different times.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. That's my experience of watching Psycho. I've never watched it.
I highly recommend for people who have not sat down and watched it, just watch it because it created the genre of like this sort of horror slasher movie. In fact, I don't know if people know this. Maybe it's an urban legend, but before Psycho, movie theaters used to just play movies on a loop, and people would come into the theater and just sort of whenever they come into the theater, watch the movie from that point till the end. And if they come in the middle, then they'll watch the beginning of the movie till the middle and just walk out. And that's how they used to play movies. When Alfred Hitchcock first released Psycho, he required people to show up at the beginning of the movie, and if they were not there at the beginning of the movie, they would not allow people into the theater after the movie started. It was the first movie that did that because there was a twist at the end, so it was like a movie that you couldn't ruin. And it's really interesting to see how it affected cinema and how it just really hasn't aged in a way that makes it feel dated in any way. It works as a movie now, so I was really impressed with that movie when I watched it.
That was a surprisingly thoughtful answer for this.
I watched a lot of them.
I don't watch a lot of horror movies. I'm going to be real. I'm not, so I don't like slasher movies. They're fine, but I'm not like a gore person either. And but also on the flip side of that, a lot of horror movies that come out these days that aren't those things are also just really bad.
Like the Blumhouse movies, yeah.
I mean, on the one hand, I appreciate the Blumhouse. I appreciate the formula of the Blumhouse movies, but yes, exactly. So I guess kind of like that psychological, like spooky but not that scary kind of genre, you know what I mean? Like, we're both fans of Ari Aster, I think, and what he's done recently with movies like Hereditary and Midsommar. I would say probably like that. Those are my favorite from like the past, 3 or 4 years in general. But they're not that scary. They're horror movies, but they're like psychological horror,
disturbing almost.
Yeah, disturbing. It's about, for me, it's about like the ambiance, the atmosphere. But
my one hot take I'll say is I didn't really think that the original Halloween was very good. I just didn't really enjoy it that much.
Did you see the new one?
No, I guess the like sort of like short slasher movies that are sort of plotless and about just a guy chasing a girl have always been less interesting to me.
Well, sure. Yeah.
And I have seen multiple Halloween movies, and everyone sort of points at the first one as like this sort of beacon of slasher movies, and I guess it created a genre, but it just wasn't that impressive to me.
While we're on the topic of spooky, but probably not actually going to be scary, have you had a chance to see the new Edgar Wright movie yet? Because I have not.
I plan, if I have time, on going after we're done recording here.
Oh, no way. Okay, yeah. Cool. I'm like super excited to see his take on the genre. I don't really anticipate it being like a great Well, great is the wrong word. I don't anticipate it being really a classic horror movie at all. But he's everything he does is fresh. Well, so
I watch Shaun of the Dead every year because it's just fucking perfect.
Yeah.
It's an amazing movie, and it really gets everything right about horror movies and comedies. And he's fantastic. So I'm looking forward to that. All right. Do you have any more that you want to get to?
Yeah. Someone asked, "What's your favorite Halloween candy?" I'm trying to figure out who it was.
Yeah, I don't know.
What's your favorite Halloween candy? It's Sunsfan 420.
Honestly, I just like dark chocolate. I'm kind of I'm old now, I guess.
You're so old. What the hell,
I'm just old. Yeah.
Not even like a. You want like milk chocolate?
No, not really.
Wow. Not even like a classic Reese's, kind of like peanut butter combo or something.
No. I mean, yeah, they're good. They're good. But yeah, I would prefer just to eat like dark chocolate over all of that. Yeah, I'm old. I'm washed.
All right, well, it's time to put Mike to bed, so I think we're gonna
Hey, what's yours? You got to answer yours now.
I would probably just like a classic Reese's peanut butter cup, but like also I saw Buddy Serge like rank all of the Reese's products on Twitter the other day, and like there's so many now. Like I think probably about the time that they came out with like the Nutrageous, I was like also okay, I'm too old for like all the choices, and I don't care anymore. But I'm trying to think if there's like an underrated. Something that's sometimes gotten me in hot water with people is I really like Almond Joy and Mounds are both probably in my top 5. And I guess
coconut.
A lot of people have a really bad reaction to. A lot of people hate coconut. I had no idea that so many people hated coconut. That it was like a controversial thing.
I used to not like coconut. I like it more now.
I'm glad your tastes are a little bit more refined. Dark chocolate and coconut. Mounds, man.
Yep.
You got it.
Combination.
We found something for you. All right, let's end it.
We'll be back. We have a special episode, I think, of our Patreon podcast coming this week with a guest. I'm looking forward to that one. If you're interested in signing up, check out patreon.com/thetimeline. If not, no big deal. We'll be back next week with a normal episode. And of course, if anything happens with the Robert Sarver story that we're still waiting on, we'll be back to analyze that as well. Thanks everyone for listening.
For over a century, Johnny Walker has shared its bold spirit with the game of golf. Now, crafted with Devereaux Golf, Johnny Walker introduces the Johnny Walker Blue Label-inspired Sunday Golf Bag, elevating the game with sleek design, Blue Label hues, and refined gold accents. Celebrate your hole-in-one with a premium Sunday bag crafted by Devereaux Golf. Submit proof of your achievement to johnnywalker.com/blue-in-1. Please drink responsibly.